Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Starving Podcast. This is your host, Justin Romer. We have a special podcast for you today, but first, I'm going to go through some of our sponsors. Our very first sponsor is Genopalette. They're a DNA nutrition company that analyzes your genes. Well, what does Genopalette tell you? They tell you a variety of different things about your DNA. One, including whether you have sensitivity to gluten or lactose, and other things such as how you metabolize protein, carbs, and fat. They also tell you how you might absorb particular vitamins compared to the general population. So if you do want to get your Genopalette kit, you can get $20 off with code CBG, and you can find the link in our bio. Our second sponsor is X Endurance. This is a company that sells supplements to general population people as well as performance-based athletes. They have supplements for weight loss, they have supplements for improving endurance, and they have all your necessary protein, creatine, and supplements that would help you based on any of your goals. So if you do want X Endurance products and it's your first time ordering with them, you can head over to the link in our bio and get 10% off that first order. Our third sponsor is DadBod Fitness Online. DadBod Fitness Online is run by some of the best CrossFit professionals in the business. Dane Smith, Adam Klink, and Ben Smith all have an online program that became available after quarantine. It provides home workouts, dad pump sessions, mom pump sessions, and everything that you would need to get your workout done in a short window. So if you're looking for a program that suits your needs at home, head over to DadBod Fitness Online and let them know that we sent you. The fourth sponsor is Consistency Breeds Growth. This company is a performance nutrition and weight loss nutrition company. But most importantly, they customize your nutrition plan and provide one-on-one coaching so that you have direct communication with your coach. They can incorporate other data such as the Genopalette DNA data into your plan. So whether you're looking for weight loss, performance, or just looking to improve your relationship with food, head over to Consistency Breeds Growth and use code CBG for 15% off your nutrition coaching today. Today, we have an excellent podcast on body recomposition. Very different from body composition. We'll explain why, so stay tuned.
It's science.
Hello, this is the Starving Podcast. This is your host, Justin Romer, and we have our co-host, Justyna, on today. How's it going?
It's going. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty great. This topic is a hot topic. It's been said to not be obtainable for many years.
Right.
And now there's more and more literature coming out that states that it is potentially possible for the trained athlete. So why don't we start by just explaining what body recomposition is versus body composition and like how they differ, and then we can go into some of the science behind why this is important.
Sounds good. Take it away.
So body composition is, in large part, most of you know this, is that it's essentially how we define the way that we look, okay? So it has a lot to do with, fat mass, fat-free mass, water content, and other things that essentially, at the end of the day, paint a visual, okay? So your body composition defines the way that you look aesthetically, okay? Other people want to look better aesthetically, and they do that by losing weight. Other people want to gain muscle, and this is how they essentially want to improve their body composition. Now, body recomposition is actually quite different, and despite the lack of standardized terminology, practitioners have described the adaptive phenomenon in which muscle mass is gained and fat mass is lost in a concerted and asynchronous fashion, so at sort of the same time, okay? So to put more simplistically, this is gaining muscle and losing fat at the same time. That is what body recomposition is, and it's been shown for several years in the scientific literature that this is obtainable for some and not obtainable for others. And we're here to tell you today that there is a possible window of opportunity for those other people that it was previously, sort of neglected and not obtainable for.
Right. So pretty much before we get into that, the usual demographics that people and scientists normally see that have had success with body recomp are usually untrained individuals that are kind of quite novice into the resistance training type weightlifting activity. Obese individuals are also seen to have high success in body recomp. And finally, individuals or athletes that do take anabolic steroids because of the mechanisms behind that. The steroids within the system allow for body recomp in those individuals.
Yeah. I think that at least for obese individuals and untrained individuals, it seemed like this sort of elusive way to gain muscle and lose body fat at the same time was possible because they are starting from a place that has a lot of either fat mass, right, or just body fat in general, and very little muscle. So it seems like it would be possible to do the exact inverse if someone were to start dieting appropriately and putting together a training protocol, even if that means just moving around more than they were prior, because their muscles that they weren't using are now actually being used.
Exactly.
And and I think also that for untrained individuals that also start incorporating some sort of resistance training and strength training can also see adaptations in the same direction towards body recomposition. So this is really not up for debate. It's been shown in several studies that untrained individuals, novice, people that are not in a gym 24/7 and decide that they're going to start training 4 to 6 days a week or even 3 days a week when they were training none can experience some level of body recomposition. And the mechanisms behind that aren't fully understood, but we know that it's absolutely possible.
Right. And what we also know again is that there is at least one gene that scientists have found that when it is active, it reduces the amount of muscle growth. But then when it isn't active, there is muscle growth. So this gene is known as the MSTN gene or the myostatin gene. And a lot of us know the term myostatin because it is a protein that makes our skeletal muscles decrease its growth and division because health-wise and physiological-wise, our bodies don't want too much muscle and cell growth for our muscle cells. However, when there is a mutation to this gene, that myostatin stops getting produced in our systems. And when the myostatin becomes less produced, that allows our muscles to continuously grow and divide. And then that's what we see in these crazy superhuman-like people. And also, fun fact too, Justin, I don't know if you know this, but scientists have currently been using this inhibitor for the myostatin gene for muscular dystrophy patients to try and get their muscles to grow so they can gain that strength that they never had due to their disease.
Wow. Yeah, what an amazing way to use some of the gene editing tools that we have and things like that to understand a little bit more about how we can treat human disease, like something like muscular dystrophy.
Right.
I didn't know about that. It's awesome.
And it could also be eventually possible, I don't know if it would be considered, like an anabolic steroid type of issue in competitive sports, but who knows, like maybe eventually in people who just want to get that perfect physique in their mind, maybe we will eventually have this scientific process where it's available to have an inhibitor for a gene. But that's wishful thinking for some people, I think.
Well, it seems to be safer to do some type of gene manipulation in a way than to take anything exogenous like, some of the side effects that people see from abuse of anabolic steroids.
Right, and scientists actually have seen there's no health disbenefit, so there's no complications related to inhibiting this gene. So who knows what we'll see.
Yeah, I've seen the where the myostatin gene is. You said that it's altered in a way, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what usually happens when the myostatin gene is normal, the protein myostatin binds to these receptors on our muscle cells. So they only go to the specific receptors, like kind of like an assigned parking spot.
Mm-hmm.
But when there's a mutation in the myostatin gene, the receptors are still there on our muscle cells, but there's no myostatin circulating around our muscle cells to go park in that receptor for it to inhibit muscle growth. So now our muscles can grow.
Wow. I got it. So it's like a lock and key mechanism in which
Yeah.
myostatin sort of blocks, at least some maybe downstream mechanisms for muscle growth. And when,
Exactly.
that lock and key mechanism isn't in effect, where the myostatin doesn't find its parking spot, muscle growth can continue exponentially.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
if anybody hasn't seen anything related to this myostatin, I encourage you to look up myostatin and type in like dog or cow or bull, and you'll see animals that are legitimately, they have like muscles on muscles. It's insane.
Right.
So obviously, like for them, like body recomposition seems to be completely doable. So I guess that's something for the future that we'll look into. But at least for now, they're, the most common way that people have done something like this or tried to achieve something like body recomposition, whereas over time they lose fat and over time they also gain muscle mass, is essentially through the combination of resistance training, right, and specific nutritional strategies that can impact training performance, recovery, and body composition, which typically starts where a person that has body fat would go on what we call a caloric deficit. So this is where someone is taking in less calories than they're actually burning, and this would result in body fat loss. And if done appropriately with a coach and with the right timing strategies, macronutrient distributions, and correct foods, you can experience minimal muscle loss, albeit still some muscle loss during this process. And then over time, after you're finished losing the body fat that you want, you can continue to, do your resistance training and then put yourself at a caloric surplus, where you are essentially taking in more calories than you're actually burning, right? When you do that, it's been shown that you can put on drastically more amounts of muscle mass per pound than you do body fat. And you continue this cycle of, increasing muscle mass and then losing body fat, increasing muscle mass. But of course, with body recomposition, as we've already defined, is different, right? This is where we're sort of kind of doing both in a concerted fashion. And there are some studies that have shown that it's possible, but what's more important is really understanding what are the methods that scientists have been using to monitor whether someone's lost muscle mass or lost body fat and gained muscle mass at the same time.
Right. So in one study that both of us actually read, where they did a review of a bunch of different studies that use different methods for measuring body recomp, it was found that there are, I say, like maybe 5 decent measurements, and one of them being the gold standard, and that is the 4C method. I unfortunately was not able to use this method when I was in grad school. For nutrition, I used the second one. However, the 4C method, the gold standard, there are several advantages to this because it's one of the best methods for measuring body comp through the calculation of fat-free mass hydration. So our lean body mass hydration levels through the measurement of total body water. Other methods of measurements do similar aspects. However, it's not as accurate due to the mechanisms at which they measure it. So the only disadvantage to this one is that it just takes a lot of time. So if you're that person trying to get measured through the 4C method, you're just going to have to be patient and try to not move. like you're getting an MRI, you're not supposed to move to mess up the images. So that's kind of the same thing for the gold standard method. The second method is the DEXA scan. So this is like an X-ray machine, and it's just a three-compartment model, able to measure, again, fat-free mass, fat mass, but also bone mineral density, which is very important in athletes specifically, and also female athletes. The only issue with this one is that how much you drank in that day that you're getting this DEXA scan, or how much you ate, can alter the results. So it may not be as accurate as that gold standard 4C method. The bod pod is the next method, which is one that I used as well. This one measures air displacement. And again, like you're getting an MRI on your leg or something like that, if you make the smallest movements in the bod pod, it can alter the results. So again, it's not as significant. Hydrostatic weighing is the next method of measurement. This is when you're essentially in a dunk tank and you have to go fully underwater, which is kind of scary, but it's pretty accurate. It's just there's the disadvantages outweigh the advantages in this one solely for the closeness of the results because of the subject that's being measured, because it's just super difficult for whoever's being measured to sit still underwater for as long as they can.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. And then the final one is an A-mode ultrasound. I don't have the most education on this one, but from my notes, the advantage of this one is that it's capable of regional and segmental measurements. So it can look at a specific body part and measure that for body recomp rather than the whole body. So you can be more specific in which area of the body you want to measure.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it seems like the 4-compartment one, which is the top one, measures sort of everything in time and space, like water composition, fat-free mass, fat mass, and it takes into all these sort of different variables that we may experience. So you can imagine, like with the DEXA scan, one disadvantage, and with the bod pod, disadvantage is that the amount of hydration that the body has at the time, obviously because we hold water in our muscles, can give sort of a slightly different result from scan to scan. And the way that people are measuring whether someone is actually obtaining body recomposition is if they're increasing muscle mass from the last time they were scanned and decreasing body fat or fat-free mass, right? Or fat mass, sorry. So if there are differences in hydration between scans, that's why these methods are not as good as the 4-component, but obviously the 4-compartment method is extremely expensive and stuff like that. So a lot of the studies, at least that I reviewed, were mostly DEXA scan based, which is good. It's just not it's not perfect. So we have to continue to look at studies regarding this topic to see if trained individuals, for example, are able to actually do body recomp and how they're actually able to do it.
Right. And for the majority of studies that we most likely will find regarding this topic, in my opinion, they're mostly going to come from universities in their sports nutrition labs. And most of the time, all these universities, they only have either the bod pod or the DEXA because of funding. So unfortunately, the accuracy of a bunch of studies is not going to be there, but we can somehow make way of what the results could have been if they had that 4-compartment gold standard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. It's based on the availability of everything we have. So,
crazy.
Right. It seems like, at least from the 10 to 12 studies that we sort of went over, the amount of resistance training needed for this, or type of training in general for this, seems to be related to like high interval intensity training, so HIIT training, and resistance training, strength training. And it's varied between reps and things like that, but at least 3 days a week of resistance training and HIIT training seems to be optimal, at least for the people that they found through DEXA scans and bod pods, that people were able to actually lose fat mass and gain muscle mass at the same time within 8 to 10 weeks, for example.
Right.
So if you're looking to do something like this, it's ideal to incorporate some type of strength training. I know that right now in quarantine, that can be extremely difficult for some people because they don't have weights at their home or their gym is closed. But if you're looking to eventually get to a point to where you can kind of do both things at the same time, which is extremely beneficial time, and not as time consuming as trying to, gain muscle mass during one period of 8 weeks and then lose fat mass during the other period of 8 weeks. You're going to have to incorporate strength training, resistance training, and, your cardio-based training should be high interval-based. Right. CrossFit, stuff like that. I don't know if I've seen a study that specifically did CrossFit and then measured body recomposition, but
no.
I think that it's something, something related to that. Like if you're a marathon runner, for example, it's pretty unlikely that you'll experience body it's not optimal to experience body recomposition if you're running a marathon. If you're a marathon runner and you're running, 10 to 12 miles a day, for example.
Exactly. We should probably run a little study between the two of us, self-experimentation of this.
I would definitely be willing to do it. Because we both do CrossFit.
And we can just do a simpler method of measurement, like skin fold calipers.
Yeah. The calipers, good old calipers, they'll be around forever.
Yeah.
I think that pictures do pretty good justice too, and at the end of the day, that's what everyone wants, right? They want to look better than they used to, or look like, a certain someone that they've seen that inspires them. So,
right.
It wouldn't be a bad idea, for some of you out there to look into achieve body recomposition, to work, by doing this and incorporating this type of resistance training and HIIT training into your life and lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. So I think our next point, we should probably go into the nutrition aspect of this, other than the caloric surplus, right?
Yeah, I think that would be that would be good because obviously nutrition has a big component in body recomposition because it is actually the fuel substrates that are supplying you with the muscle mass, and then obviously to get rid of calories as well, you have to take in a certain number of calories. So when it comes to the actual mechanism of this, it seems pretty unlikely to me, even before reading everything, that someone would actually take fat mass on their body and convert it into muscle mass. So this old myth of like people actually, turning body fat into muscle is pretty unlikely. The amount of energy required to do something like that is pretty challenging, pretty difficult, because you have to essentially amidate, a fat molecule, for example, or a triglyceride or whatever it might be, into an actual protein or an amino acid. So what's more likely is that the substrates that you're actually taking in, such as protein, is getting converted into muscle mass via your resistance training, and as a sort of based on the calorie balance that you have left, you're losing fat mass. And I mean, in terms of the mechanism, like I said, it's not completely understood, but the energy cost of skeletal muscle growth is not even fully known. So if you want to ensure sort of how the magnitude of the energy supply through exogenous sources like your diet and your food pertains to the process, it's just going to require a lot more information. And I mean, with that said, even body composition changes seem to be more complex than energy balance alone, because research has shown that different nutritional strategies, such as high protein diets and hypocaloric diets, may elicit different body recomposition. And of course, we also know that everyone is different. So like even in a lot of studies I've seen, it wasn't like this guy gained 2 pounds of muscle, this guy lose 2 pounds of fat, and so did all of his buddies in the study. You know,
Right. Right.
even when they tried to control for everything that they could, right? Because hormones are a big component of this as well.
Exactly. I was actually just going to say, in one of the studies that was included in this meta-analysis, I really liked the fact that they specifically looked at female physique competitors. Although they are physique competitors, they're still female, and they do have the hormonal changes that all females do. So I really like the fact that they specifically showed us that body recomp is possible for all females if you do that hard work in the gym for resistance training, but also do a caloric surplus specifically for protein. So
Right.
it helps a lot with females, in my opinion, seeing like, oh wow, like although I have all these crazy hormone changes, just like guys do too, but it just makes it more obtainable to
Yeah.
the common eye.
Yeah. I mean, I think I think most scientists know and would be foolish to not address that there are hormone changes in favor of increasing muscle mass in men over women. But at the same token, like testosterone's not the only thing at play here.
Right.
If it was, then how come women that have apparently low testosterone are still, being able to put on muscle mass? So, like the ability of androgen receptors and other things like that activate mTOR and other signaling pathways for muscle growth are obviously available in that of women,
Right.
and it's not totally reliant just on testosterone being in the body, so or in high amounts in the body. Of course, it helps, but it's not the only piece of the pie, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
But I like how you mentioned about the high protein diet. So yeah, a lot of the studies that I also read suggested that in order to do body recomposition, you want to try to be at a caloric surplus, right? So to me, the caloric surplus, if we're thinking about calories in versus calories out, that means someone will be gaining weight over the course of 8 to 10 weeks. So if that's the case, then this person would be actually gaining weight over 8 to 10 weeks, and that would be in the form of muscle mass and losing body fat at the same time. So for those people out there that are following a diet with a coach or have found something online that you're following and that you really like and you're adhering to and you're not seeing the scale move, this is a possibility, even for trained athletes. Like I said, some of these studies were people that were training for a year or more, right? And I wouldn't exclusively call those people trained, but they are a part of a demographic that we thought couldn't do this prior. So
Right.
if you're not seeing those scale changes that you want to see, over 6 to 10 weeks, it's very possible if you're incorporating resistance training, which you hadn't done before, or maybe you have been doing it, but you're following something that puts you at a caloric surplus, and you're doing resistance training, that you might be experiencing body recomposition.
Right.
You know?
And I think a lot of the issue is too here, I feel like I'm at fault too. I may think that I am at a caloric surplus, but you also got to remember like your resting metabolic rate too, how quick that is. On top of the training that you do, it's going to boost your metabolism. So in my opinion, I think, and for myself at least, I have to eat more food than I actually think I need to in order to be at a caloric surplus.
Yeah, I would agree. I think for you, like your metabolic rate's high, you have, you have like the thermic effect of food, right? So like some of the food you're ingesting is part of your calories out already just because you're taking it in.
Right.
And then you have non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT. So this is, all these things factor into your metabolic rate, but in EAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis is like the calories we burn essentially at rest or doing something that's not exercise related, right? So this is like 60% of the daily calories that we burn. Exercise itself is like 30%, and then everything else is related to, your other things related to your metabolism and your hormones and your the thermic effect of food, as I mentioned before. So, yeah, I mean, for people that have trouble putting on muscle mass, like you're probably not at a caloric you're not at a caloric surplus.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what the definition is. So, you can't be at a caloric surplus if you're not gaining weight, but you can be experiencing body recomposition at a caloric surplus, and that's really the point that I wanted to make. And it seems like from a macronutrient standpoint for body recomposition, protein seems to be more important than the other two macronutrients. It seems that for protein, you need even above a gram per pound of body weight, which is something that not a lot of coaches recommend. For me, myself, when I'm trying to help someone, and most of the people that I help are either performance athletes or trying to lose body fat specifically, I have them on anywhere from 0.7 grams per pound of body weight to 0.95 grams per pound of body weight.
Right.
And for body recomp, it seems somewhere even above 1.2 to 1.4 grams per pound of body weight to achieve body recomposition. And it makes sense, right? Because like protein is literally what our muscles are made up of.
Right.
So if you want to put on muscle mass, you have to be taking in protein, period. And it seems that based on studies where people were given a low protein diet versus a higher protein diet, so like 0.6 grams per pound of body weight to like 0.75 grams per pound of body weight versus 1.1 to 1.4 grams per pound of body weight, the people on 1.1 to 1.4 grams per pound of body weight gain more, fat-free mass, which is muscle.
Exactly.
So I think that that's definitely something to think about if you're trying to. I mean, I'm going to try to do body recomposition.
Me
because,
too.
Because it's like the holy grail of dieting. Like, and what a lot of people, I think, and I know that you can resonate with this, Justyna, not you yourself, but some of the clients that you might work with, is they get to a point after, the 16 or the 24 weeks or whatever it is that we're working with them, and they lost the 15 pounds that they said they wanted to, but they still don't look the way that they wanted to.
Right. And actually, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but really quick, the last client that we actually spoke about, and we posted her results, her photos that she allowed us to, she didn't even lose that much weight numerically on the scale, but when you look at her, it looks like she did. So that gives you even more support as to, even if you lose those 15 pounds, but you don't look the way you want to look, maybe we got to do something differently.
Right. And a lot of times I tell people, like, you don't look the way that you want because you don't have enough muscle mass.
Exactly.
You don't have enough muscle mass to look the way that you want to look. You thought if you lost the 15 pounds, your muscles would just be there and you would look like whoever it is in your mind that you were picturing.
Right.
But you actually don't look that way, and it's because you don't have enough muscle mass. So if you can find the right window of body recomp, and as we said, we don't think that that's easy, especially for trained people, because it's just a law of diminishing returns thing. Like people that are extremely trained typically have a lot of muscle mass and very low body fat.
Right.
So it becomes increasingly difficult to put on more muscle mass and lose body fat at the same time.
Yeah.
So it's a window of opportunity that's continuing to be explored. And it seems like, at least from a nutritional standpoint, it's through a caloric surplus, a slight caloric surplus, 400 to 500 calories, and a high protein diet.
Right.
Yeah. I think lastly, I want to talk a little bit about how this might differ for the performance athlete. So, okay, let's take a CrossFit athlete, for example, because we work with a lot of CrossFit athletes. They need a lot of metabolic fuel. And protein, for example, is not, in terms of exogenous protein, is not the best metabolic fuel. Obviously, like muscle mass is extremely important for them because it's used to actually lift heavy weights and for contractions and things like that. But in terms of fuel for metabolic activity and metabolic conditioning, let's call it a metcon, they need carbohydrates, right?
Exactly.
And it becomes pretty challenging for performance athletes to try to improve body recomp or establish body recomp on the diet that we suggested, because typically they need more carbohydrates and they have to give away something there. And usually that's protein. Usually even my high level athletes that are really low body fat and that have a lot of muscle mass are not on more than 1 gram per pound of body weight.
Oh, wow.
So they need the carbs. So, like Saxon is like his body weight around 180 to 180 to 185 pounds of protein, and then he's on triple or more his body weight in carbohydrates.
Right.
He's on 580 to 600 grams of carbohydrates on a given day. He has 100 grams of carbs per meal.
Right. Actually, when I watched your and Saxon's brunch on Instagram Live, I was like, damn, I wish I could eat that much carbs like he does.
He had a whole mango in there, a whole cup of oatmeal. He had bread. He had everything. It was crazy. Yeah, but he was, and that was his off day, actually. We did that Instagram Live. So he's not playing around. He takes his nutrition seriously. And
good.
Yeah, that's sort of the difference between, people trying to do body recomp and performance athletes, depending on your sport. Muscle mass is not always conducive. And then, like, if you're a marathon runner, why would you want to do body recomp?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just not going to work well, and it's not going to be conducive to your training and you improving your marathon time or half marathon time, whatever it might be. So it's important to know that sometimes body recomp and other sport-specific tasks are not synonymous, and you shouldn't be trying to do both. But for, the average person that's trying to improve their body composition, want to put in some hard work, doing 3 to 4 days of resistance training and trying to be extremely diligent about eating clean food, but being at a caloric surplus, and specifically that surplus coming from protein, I think it's extremely doable. It's extremely doable for some people, even if you've been training for a couple years. I mean, based on the studies that I've seen,
Right.
Anything else you want to add? I mean, there are supplements and things like that can help you reach your protein goals. I think that's good, but other than that,
Other than that, I do want to just mention super quick, one of the studies did do a comparison between 2 different types of whey protein. 2 different types of protein, one of them being whey. Off the top of my head, I cannot remember the other type, but
was it a casein protein or?
I think so.
Yeah, casein protein. So. I think that's right. Yep.
Yeah, and they found that whey protein was significantly better for body recomp. So just for anyone who wants to do more research on protein supplements for body recomp, whey protein is the one.
Yeah, the whey protein. Yeah, it makes sense. Fast activating whey protein with high leucine content seems to help stimulate muscle growth. But yeah, I didn't read that whole study. But yeah, thanks for telling us that. I think that's good. People know that they have to. They should opt to a whey protein over like a plant-based protein or a slow digesting casein protein. Nice. All right, guys. Well, that was awesome. I had a blast talking about body recomp. Justyna, thank you for, obviously being so educated as you normally are when you come on a podcast and talking about this. Yeah, I know that it's not a completely understood topic, and it's extremely controversial in the scientific literature and on Instagram. So it's good that we came in here and at least provided a little bit of insight. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're looking for consistency breeds growth, we're going to be doing a Labor Day sale pretty soon, actually. So look out for that, and use code CBG to get 15% off some of our nutrition coaching. And if you want to find us on the Starving Podcast, you can find us on your preferred podcast app. Please subscribe, or you could find us on Instagram at _starving_podcast. Thanks for joining me today, Justyna, and we will chat with you guys soon.
Science.